There was another move that the Federal Reserve made last week, which was perhaps a little bit more under the radar. They did not extend this exemption for the supplementary leverage ratio. And the idea here is that banks were holding a lot more treasuries on their books, and they didn't have to hold additional capital to offset the potential risk. A lot of people said that made sense. The fact that it wasn't extended may prompt banks to have to sell some of these treasuries, yet we're not seeing that reflected necessarily just yet in the yields. Do you think this will become more of a problem for the auctions this week as the U.S. prepares to sell $206 billion of debt?
Yeah, and I know there's a bit of a two-way argument that's been created on the supplementary leverage ratio. I don't understand the two-way argument. If the supplementary leverage ratio, giving the exemption, didn't help the system absorb deposits and treasuries, then what was the point in the first place? So if it did absorb deposits and treasuries and now the exemption's gone away, it stands to reason that you're going to have more deposits and treasuries floating around the system.
Okay, so can you extrapolate out what that means for yields? I mean, could this lead to yields that do not lead to just loose financial conditions? Could it be a tightening in financial conditions because it's not stemming from growth expectations, but rather from a misbalance, perhaps, or a change in the balance of supply and demand?
Well, that's a really good question. And I think for sure you're going to see obviously a lot more supply. We've got a $1.9 trillion stimulus working its way through the system. That's got to be funded. Now you don't have these big balance sheets there to absorb it the way they might have last month. And on top of that, I think the other thing you hinted at, I think this is the first step of the Fed tightening monetary policy. It's gradual, and I think we've just seen that without ostensibly coming out and supporting the long end and then letting the exemption on SLR expire. I think that's the first stage in the normalization or tightening process.